welcome to this morning/afternoon. We straddle the midday hour. This session on Let's Get Functional, as I like to say, the fast path to smart serverless with Spring Cloud Function and Azure Functions. I did not actually tip my hand that there's actually something else I want to share because I was trying to slide in under the wire with that extra something because I find it just terribly fascinating. And I wound up getting it to work. Everything just works perfectly fine until I walk into this room. So we'll see, right? If not, I'll at least kind of show you where my thinking goes. But it's kind of an interesting area to consider. And we're seeing a lot more interesting overlaps. And Oleg and I were talking about this before the session. There are actually many ways this can go. So I'll show you one particular direction of exploration. We'll talk maybe a little bit at the end about some pros, cons, some trade-offs, some when you might choose one over the other type thing. I do kind of cover that early on, but it's a more straightforward and I don't want to say cut and dry, but it's certainly more separated choice than really exists anymore with things evolving as they are. Sorry. Again, my name is Mark Heckler. I am a principal cloud advocate of Java and JVM languages with Microsoft. Former Spring team member. It's fun because I appreciate that they actually still will talk to me on the Spring team, which I truly appreciate. I just have to chase them down and tackle them in the hallway, but they will still talk after I catch them, so that's a good thing. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, hopefully we'll have some time at the end, but again, it is only 50 minutes. I think I've got it to where we will have time. If not, by all means, or if you're like me, you think of the best questions, comments, or feedback 10 minutes after you walk out of the room, it happens. Reach out to me. Email works. Twitter's better. Mastodon's the best, but it's just easiest. The kind of the center of gravity, we were talking about this last night, is still Twitter, so MKHeck. If you are a Macedonian, I've been on Mastodon since like 6 months after it came out. I'm happy to finally see some activity there, even if it's for bad reasons, sad and unfortunate reasons. But I'm at MKHeck, same Twitter handle, at mastodon.cloud. Shock, right? Okay. Did that move? That did not move. It's still not moving. Let's try this. That worked. Okay, a bit about me. I am an architect and developer by background. Obviously, I'm an advocate. I am also an author. I've contributed content and code to several books. I've co-authored a couple of books, and I solo-authored a book, which we'll go into a bit more detail about here momentarily. Very proud of that. That actually started up about the time the pandemic hit. So when I was not able to jet set around the world, it was awesome because I already had something kind of queued up and ready to work on. So I am a Java champion, Java 1 Rockstar, Groundbreaker Ambassador, Kotlin Developer Expert, handful of other nice honors and awards that I truly appreciate, but still mean I have to bring my own coffee. I don't know who I see about that, but it's where we are. I am also a licensed instrument-rated pilot. I find that a fascinating exercise of both mental and physical skills, and I think as developers, we are kind of ideally suited for that kind of thing, especially the instrument side, because you have to trust the instruments. You have to trust and verify, and we do that daily, right? We trust that the computer, the AI, whatever, is going to do what we expect it to do, but we always double check because we know better, right? So it's fun to see the world from a different perspective, a few thousand feet in the air. Here's the latest book. It's Spring Boot up and running. All of the examples, well, except for the data feed, that I just did in Java, but all the examples are available both in Java and Kotlin. So if you want to see how the other half lives, you can check that out. It's pretty easy to do that as well. For some reason, O'Reilly hiccuped on the repository. They did a move of their repos. So if you get the book, ping me directly, Twitter, email, whatever, or just search under my repos on GitHub, github.com/mkheck, and find the one that's Spring Boot up and running because that's got the code. I need to update that for Spring Boot 3. There's not a lot of changes, but things like security model and things like that will change a bit. So it's in the queue. Now let's see if that arrow works. It does. Okay. So the plan for today is this. As the saying goes, I love a good quote, by the way. This is by Leonard Bernstein, a former composer and former conductor of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. And he once said, to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And I think we have both of those today. So let's charge forward. A bit of an overview. I find myself already raspy. So can you hear me in the back? Is the mic working or is it just me projecting? I don't want to do both. I don't want to like blast people, but let me know if it's like too much, or if it's good or need more. Let me know. Good. Okay, great. I'm kind of looking at you in the back corner, but you. But sanity check with anybody in the back row, actually. And for the front row folks, I really appreciate it because if I make a coding error, it's on you to catch it. So please do realize that this is a collaborative exercise. So I truly appreciate you, and I know you'll probably never sit up front again, but it's okay because today you're here, and you can't move, no backsies. So a quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about when to app and when to function. By that, what I mean is that as developers, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, right? So among those are deployment targets. And when does it make sense to make something an app, and when does it make sense to make something a function? Now, with every day that passes, that line gets blurrier. So I'm going to kind of give you an insight into my twisted thought process and show you kind of the path I follow. And again, these are rules of thumb because we are still expected to inject our brains into things, evaluate the current situation, the scenarios that we're using, because these may change. And I'll get into that a bit more as we go through it, as well as at the end, kind of the big finale. Gosh, I hope I didn't oversell that. The finale, how's that? So we'll talk about some rules of thumb I follow, and then feel free to tailor them or discard them and choose your own. It's okay. I'll talk about why Spring Cloud function, why Azure functions, and then we'll code. And again, there is something else in there I want to throw in, but we'll leave it at that for now. So, gosh, I really, really wish that something happened to my PowerPoint on the way in, and my whole second screen is this tiny little square up here, so I can almost read it. So I'm going to be winging it a bit, but we'll see. So kind of what I look at when it comes to deciding, you know what, maybe I can do this. I'm not tethered. There are no strings on me. Okay, so when you have a bit of functionality, how do you deploy it? How do you decide whether it should be an app or a function? And again, I'm kind of creating this just dichotomy for the purposes of discussion. But here are the rules of thumb I use just to start off with. Is there a low time between calls? So if there is a low time between calls, what I mean is it's constantly being called. That bit of functionality is being exercised quite frequently. If so, that's probably going to point to it being an application versus a function, right? And then if you say, well, no, there's not really a low time between calls. I mean, it can take a while. It's kind of sporadic, or maybe it's an hour in between calls or a day or whatever. Then you look at, is it long running? Because if it's an hour between calls and it takes 59 minutes to execute, you're kind of filling that gap another way, right? So if it is long running, if it's not a low time between calls, but it is long running, you're still looking at an app. If it's a low time between or not a low time between calls, I should say, and it's also not long running, you've got something that's being hit quite frequently and quite quickly. And that's an ideal candidate for a function. And again, this is a rule of thumb. As I say at the bottom, some caveats apply, and we'll get into some of those caveats as we go, right? So that was so nice I could actually see that. That's amazing. So we go back to 3 points. So that I can actually read from here. So why Spring Cloud Function? Well, other than the fact that I came from the Spring team, and my good friend Oleg is the head of Spring Cloud Function. He's just an awesome guy. Other than that, I always point to a couple of things, and there are many, many reasons why you might want to lean on Spring Cloud Function for your functions. But a couple of the key points, in my opinion, are the ability to have the capabilities, the power, the laser-like developer focus of Spring Boot and the whole Spring portfolio at your disposal, right? So you can create a function using Spring Cloud Function and pull in all of the power of Spring data. You can authenticate. You can have auto configuration. It makes your dependency management much easier. So you have a lot of reasons you'd want to use that versus another option. The other thing that it gives you is a very, very thin abstraction. In fact, it's so thin, it uses a Java function, right? So there's not this cruft that's built on top. It's actually at the bare metal level. So if you're familiar with function and it takes one object type and it returns another object type, you're already well on your way to writing Spring Cloud functions. Anyway, you get where I'm going. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. There are many other things, but those are the two that I think just pretty much sell it by themselves. Why Azure functions? Well, I don't know if you realize I work for Microsoft, right? So I mean, it's I'm not kidding about that, but Azure Functions is a really solid platform that's being worked on and refined and improved every day. I can show you some interesting numbers here later on. and I will, hopefully we'll have time. But if not, I'll at least casually mention them, and then we can follow up later if you want. I will say that I feel like the two together make a really nice platform to deploy your Spring Cloud functions. I will probably mention this down the road, but just in case I get busy and forget, there are multiple ways you can trigger an Azure function. I'm going to be showing you one today, but whether it's a database trigger or a messaging queue trigger with RabbitMQ or Kafka or what have you, an HTTP trigger, did I mention that? So you have multiple ways to trigger that function, and performance is quite nice. So, and then there's another, the big question marks. There's another option, and this is kind of where I mentioned earlier, there's this kind of blending, this blurring of the lines, and we'll get into that as we go as well. I need to make sure I don't spend too much time monologuing and lose time that I want to have for coding, because it's time for coding. So with that, hopefully it won't turn out like that. I like this podium. This is kind of nice. That's cool. Okay. Kidding. All right. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to kind of show you my development process to a point, kind of how I come up with and develop a function and deploy a function, right? And I'm going to short circuit a couple things because, again, our time is somewhat limited, and I want to make sure I don't run out of time for something I want to include later on. But this will get us kind of started down the road, and I do want to show kind of where we're going with it. But before I get into that, and I actually should back up just a little bit, the scenario for today, I didn't want to just create a simple function and go, there it is. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're coming into something new. But I like to kind of craft the whole end-to-end scenario because all of us live in a complex world, right? So it's nice to see some of these things interacting. I like it. I mean, it makes me feel good. And data, nothing wrong with generated data as well, but live data is eminently cooler, right? When you know something is actually live coming out of the ether, it's just, I don't know, it's more fun, I think. But, that's fine. Anyway, so what I did, the scenario I'm building is I have this device at home, and it's running in my network closet. And I actually do have a network closet. It's so awesome. Because for years, I just had this kind of pile of equipment in the corner, and my wife kept saying, clean it up. Just clean it up. And I kept thinking, visions of glorious network closets, and we had one under the stairs. It was just sitting there waiting to be used. So I finally did it. I got the mounts. I put everything in. It is gorgeous, I think. But anyway, so I have this device, bunny trail. So I have this device that actually listens for broadcasts from aircraft flying in the vicinity, right? It's from planefinder.net. If you're interested, you can set up your own. But what happens in the US with aircraft is that they have transponders, right, which will actually report position. But they also have a thing called ADSB out, which is Automated Dependent Surveillance Broadcasting System out. Yeah, we're not the only ones who love acronyms, folks. It's nuts. But this ADSB out, once a minute, it will broadcast a position. Well, if I have my device, if the aircraft is flying within a couple hundred miles of where my device is, and it's high enough, or else it's closer and it's lower, but it's closer, I can pick up a position report about every minute. So if an aircraft is flying through, like Southwest Air Flight 864, I'm going to track that all the way into St. Louis until it lands, or when it takes off and it's heading to Philadelphia, or whatever the case may be. So I should have said Delta, shouldn't I? Oh my gosh, oops, faux pas number one, at least. Okay, so Delta Flight 254, okay. So what that allows me to do is capture live data and use it. I don't use it for anything, I just feed it to Planefinder so people can watch aircraft around the world. And you have these things around the world, so everybody's reporting. And any civilian aircraft will have at least a transponder, and depending on where you are, it'll have some kind of device like an ADSB out unit or whatever, varies based on country and authority and stuff. So I have this thing, I'm querying it using this Planefinder application that I built. And I'm just querying this to give us what's flying in the area at that point in time. So I was going to show you, but I actually have it wired to a couple functions, because what I want to do is when I get that, when I query that, I want it to send that data to a couple of different functions, and I need to split that. I want to split that out. So I want the aircraft information just so I see the aircraft itself. So like the ADSB hexadecimal code, right, and the registration number and the type of aircraft it is. But I also want to track the positions. What I plan to do is track those positions and get this kind of like path over time. Because you may or may not know, but a typical flight will happen over and over the same 2 points each day, same time, right? So if it flies from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. at 8 a.m. and flies back at 11:30 and then flies up again at 1:30 and then flies back at 4:30, that'll happen every day, usually. But it's kind of nice to see that and track and kind of see where the deltas are, right? So, oh, is that not powering? Interesting. It looked like it was trying to power down. Oh, yeah, it is. It's not, there's no power coming to my machine. Interesting. Okay, so I don't want to run out of power before we get done. That would be embarrassing. Huh. It's like it doesn't even see that. Okay, well, I have this Plane Finder application. Hopefully I'll get this charging. If not, we'll really go through this quickly. Oh, there we go. Okay, have this Plane Finder application. What it does is allow me to query it. It'll send the positions to one function. It'll send the aircraft to another function, so we can do with it what we want. Now, at this point, what I have is just an echo function or a bounce back function, so I see that it's actually working. So I have an Azure function, a Spring Cloud function, using Azure function running already for the positions. The positions, they're a little more complex to code, and I wanted to save time for the other stuff, so I have it already running. You can see it's running down here locally. It's accepting gets and posts, and it's running on port 7072 with API/pause for the endpoint. Now I'll go over to our Plane Finder, and I'll start that up running. Let's see, do I need to do anything else? Even W, Spring, boot, run, and I'll get that going. So we'll have that running. Hopefully everything will work on that. But let's go ahead and build out our aircraft function. And that way we can fill out this trifecta, if we will. So I'm going to go here to the Spring Initializer, and I'm going to zoom in on that just a little bit. And I'm going to use Java and Maven for my language and build system. If you'd rather use Kotlin, that's perfectly fine. If you're a hipster, you can use Groovy or Gradle, that's fine. I left my hoodie in my bag, so I mean, I'm going to stick with Maven today. But use what makes you happy. I'm going to use the current version of boot, which is 3.0.5, and I'm just going to change this to the hecklers.com. It doesn't work otherwise, I find. Kidding. And we're going to make this our AC Fun. So I'm going to call this AC Fun DN for Devnexus. And we'll make this our aircraft function. Fortunately, in this case, spelling doesn't count, but I will change that because otherwise it'll drive me crazy. Package name is good. We're going to use jar packaging, Java 17. I'm going to add a dependency. Whoops, add a dependency. And there we go. It's a little sluggish. That's interesting. So I'm going to bring in the Spring Cloud function dependency, and that's it. And we'll generate our code or generate our application, our bundle, right? So our project bundle actually just it actually doesn't generate code other than main application class, main method. But what it does do is it generates your project. So then from there you can open it up and get started quickly, which is what I'm going to do. So we'll open that up and go to the desktop. And we'll open that up in IntelliJ. Sometimes I use VS Code, sometimes I use IntelliJ. I like to keep it light, keep people guessing. So let's see, we'll close that. Let's go to our POM. POM is very lean, as you might imagine. We just brought in the one dependency, and of course we have our test, our Spring Boot starter. I'm going to bring in or open up our application properties here. And I'm going to just set the server port to 7071. That's the default for Azure Functions, but again, you can change it. You can do whatever you want. I just kind of have it in mind to do that here. So here is our main application class. Now, I'm going to start really simple here because, again, I said I would kind of show you a look inside my mind, sad though it is, and we'll start there. So I'm going to create a bean, and this is a function. I'll just take a string and return a string typos, and we'll call this echo, and we'll take S and we'll return S. We'll keep it really super simple. Now, if you want to go crazy, you can do a 2 uppercase, or you can reverse it or whatever. Yes, let's let's throw caution to the wind, right? Okay, let's do that. So string buffer, string builder, that's fine. String buffer dot new, and we'll take S, and we'll do a reverse, and we'll toString it. Okay, so that, see, we're going crazy here, folks. This is just buckle up. It's going to get wild. All right, so this is the starting point, right? This is a pretty simple starting point, but it works. So yeah, and this is the thing. It finished with exit code 0 because it does what a function is supposed to do. It runs, it stops, right? So what I'm going to do is just go back to my POM. I'm going to add a dependency here. And my friend Oleg told me something that I'm going to try because what is life without a net, right? It's fun. That's what it is. So I'm going to bring in Spring Cloud function. Spring Cloud starter function webflux, right? And I'm just going to comment this. Although I'll have to restore it later. Don't let me forget that, Oleg. Or I may have to restore it later. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this. We'll restart it. Gives me a chance to take a drink anyway. Because the Spring Cloud starter function webflux will actually include what is in the Spring Cloud function context. So let's try that again, or try that for the first time. I'm running Planefinder here, so let me go to a different window here. So let's do it here. So HTTP, I use HTTP, it's curl for humans. It'll assume certain defaults like the local host if you don't provide it. So I'm just going to hit 7071. I'm going to bring in Devnexus. Isn't that bananas? Oh, let me clean that up. Okay, so let's do this. HTTP also has a bare mode -B, so that way we don't get the clutter. Wow. Okay, any questions? No, I'm just kidding. We'll get to the questions. We'll get to the harder stuff. But it's simple, right? I mean, this is a Java function. It's so nice. It's so easy to use. So let's take this a little bit further, right? I know you didn't come for just reversing text, so it's a good start though, right? So I'm going to go here. Let's see, go here and open that up. And I'm just going to create another class here. We'll call it aircraft. Clever, right? And I'm going to define a few things for our member variables. So ADS hex code, right? And the registration number of the aircraft and not type. And then I'm just going to create a constructor. I will create a noargs constructor for Azure Functions because we'll need that later on. And then I'm going to add a few other things, just niceties like getters and setters. And probably want our equals and hash code methods. And then we'll probably want something like a toString here. Et voila. Okay, so we're good there. So here is our domain class. This is what we're going to be expecting. So let's go back here now, and let's take this up a notch. So I'm going to create another bean here, and this will be a function that takes an aircraft and returns an aircraft, and we'll call this AC. Right? I'm not great with naming. So we'll take, actually I'm going to take the AC, and I'm going to just expand this a little bit because what I like to do is just for some visibility, I like to see what the AC is, the aircraft coming in, and then I want to return new aircraft, and I'll take the incoming ADS hex code, the registration number, and then the type, right? I actually should do the type is fine. Type, get type. Okay, now we're not really doing any transformation, right? A function is all about transformation. So I'm going to, again, go bananas here, and I'm going to say type. Okay, so this, again, this is also a sad transformation, but at least it's something, right? So you can see that something is actually happening here. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just want to show you that actually something does really happen here. So I'm going to restart this. Oh, you know what? I want to do a little bit more than this. What I like to do is, because it's easier to see this way, and after all, they are my logs, right? So I'm just going to do that. There we go. What's life without whimsy? Anybody recognize that quote? No Dr. Sheldon Cooper fans in here? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, what's life without whimsy? Let's try this again. Now I'm going to show you something here because I'm just going to pipe that, and you see there's a problem because when we add one function bean, it's very easy to figure out what you want to do, what you want to call. now we have 2. So we need to be a little more specific here. I want to point this to echo, and that worked. Should probably rename that, but that's fine. And we'll take AC, and actually I'm going to just pipe in, I have an aircraft class defined here, dev aircraft, some aircraft JSON, and that worked. Woo. Again, it's super easy, right? I mean, up to this point, we started working with Spring Cloud Function, and it just feels simple. And it's simple elegance is why you start using it and why you continue to use it. So that gets us started with, and how I start with Spring Cloud Function. Now, how do we take that on into Azure Functions? How do we deploy it to a platform that's going to do it for us and run it for us? And that is where we add in a little bit of complexity here. I'm going to start, and actually, since I don't like, quote, coding in YAML, I'm going to have a few live templates that I plug in here. I could type this, but man, it's not pretty. So I'm going to add this in. So Azure Functions, I want to add the thin version, the thin layout version, so I can use that down below. I'm going to comment out the Spring Cloud Starter function webflux, because everything that we need will be in another dependency here, which is the Azure Functions, Spring Cloud Function Adapter for Azure dependency. And then I want to come down to our Spring Boot Maven plugin, and I want to add in our thin dependency Spring Boot Maven plugin, our thin layout dependency here, because that allows it to be formatted properly for Azure Functions. And then I want to bring in one more plugin, which is just super simple here, which is our Azure Functions plugin. That's actually not super simple. I was being a little tongue-in-cheek with that. Close that, close that. So it has a few extra things in here, right? I've got it set where I can configure it to deploy to a particular resource group in a particular region. I have it pointing to a particular host.json file and a local settings JSON file for when I want to run it locally. Because you can actually run, and I suggest this, you can actually run and test these things locally, which is a huge help. You're not constantly pushing into the cloud and trying to figure it out from there. You run them locally, troubleshoot, isolate, fix, and then deploy. So it's a very nice, again, continuation of that cycle. Now, it will actually generate the host.json and local settings JSON file for you, or at least a placeholder, but I like to provide a little more information, so I plug it in and tell it where to look for the ones that I'm going to create. And with that, I think we're pretty much where we need to be. So let's just restart this or add to this. I'm going to now go to pull this up and go back over here. And then I want to create a directory here. We'll call this the Azure directory, because this is where I'm going to place the host.json and the local settings JSON file. So we'll create our files here, and we'll have a bit of information here. So the version, and it prompts you as you go, right? So 2.0 is correct, and then the, typo there. The extension bundle we want, which is the ID we'll want, is the Azure Functions extension bundle, and then the version number for that, again, it prompts you all the way. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There is a bit of complexity here, but again, it's easy to get there from here. So let me go back over here, and we will add in now our local settings JSON, local.settings.json. And here we'll have a couple of settings, let's see. Should be is encrypted. Why is that not? I just bragged on it, and now it's just not. And now it's letting me down. So let's see. Yeah, maybe. I see. This is where something like OpenAI ChatGPT would come in really handy. So let me see. I'll type this by memory and see if I'm close. And if I'm not close, I'll just fix it. So is encrypted, false, and then version. And see, this is where it gets a lot trickier. So I'm gonna have to just cheat. Feel terrible about this. So find local.settings, and there it is. Yeah, is encrypted. Oh, because I didn't do the uppercase. Well, now it's just a challenge now. So is encrypted. Oh, don't I feel silly? So values, and then the the runtime is Java. And then the main class, and it won't prompt you for this one, this just you're on your own. Now this, in order to prevent any kind of fat finger typos that I might do, what I do is go to the main application class, and I just grab the package here, local settings, and I paste that in, and then I go back to my main application class and I grab the name, because how many times have you had a typo that just befuddled you for way too long? Yeah, I'm guilty. So it's easier to copy paste. It just makes sense. Okay, so we have those. The only other thing that I need to do now is to create the trigger, because with Azure Functions, there is always a trigger. Again, the database trigger or messaging platform trigger or HTTP trigger, which is what I'm going to create here now. So new Java class, we'll call this our function component, and I'm going to make this a component, right? And I'm going to inject, what I want is a function, right, that takes an aircraft and returns an aircraft. We'll call this AC. We happen to have one of those, fortunately. So let's go ahead and add our constructor parameter. So we inject that. We auto-wire that in. And I'm going to create a function here. And I'm going to call this AC. And I'm going to return an HTTP message, response message here. And we'll call this AC function. Again, whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to take an HTTP, or use an HTTP trigger. We'll call this, the name is, we'll call it request. Why not? Or just rec. It doesn't matter. And then the methods we want to support are get and a post method. And then I want to have auth level set to anonymous, because I want to be able to, for anybody to get to this from anywhere, at least at this point, for the purposes of our demo. And this will be an HTTP request message. It will accept an optional, and it will expect an optional of type aircraft. And we'll call this request. And let's do that. And let's see what's going on here. There we go. There we go. Okay. So what we want to do at this point is just return. I'm going to return our request. I'm going to use that to create a response builder, right? So I want to return an OK. That's good. I'm going to set the header to a content type of application/JSON, right? And I'm going to use the request to create the body, right, or grab the body, getBody.get, because that will get us our aircraft, and that should do it. Let's see, actually I need to do a build. Right, there we go. Okay, simple, right? I mean, it's a little more complex, but that gives you the flexibility to set your own kind of triggers or multiple triggers or what have you, and call, once again, our Spring Cloud function that takes an aircraft and returns an aircraft, right? So I'm going to, what's that? Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. Good catch, yeah, ac.reply, apply. Thinking is hard, yeah, talking is hard. So there we go. Yeah, I would have caught that in the build, maybe, or at least in the run, the execution. Good catch. All right, so let's see, where do I want to go? I've got my position function running. I've got my plane finder running. So here we go. Let's go to AC function here. So I'm going to do a maven w clean package, and we'll get that packaged up. Will I play with the podium a little bit here? Cue Jeopardy music. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. I'm going to have to ask you to come to all of my sessions here. All right, so Azure Functions run. So I'm just going to run this locally, and then we're going to kick off the whole party where we have the positions in the aircraft, and we have our plane finder, and it's going to feed this information to it. Oh, that's not pretty. What happened here? Failed to load function AC with function ID. Oh dear. Okay, so this is, let's go back and look at our code here. Oleg saved me from my one problem. So we have our, I don't know. Let's see, let's find out here. We have our beans, have our host JSON, local settings JSON, runtime, there we go. Okay, that might make a bit of a difference here. I did notice when it started up that it was saying it couldn't grok the language. Just didn't quite click fast enough. There we go. Okay, so let's try that again. Just make sure everything is squeaky clean and ready to go. Oh my gosh. Oh, you know what? Did I, the only thing that I can think of that I did differently is I left the one thing, the one dependency commented. Oleg? Let's find out if that solves the problem right here. Let me start the build here. So yes, yeah, right up here. Yes, but only one takes an aircraft, returns an aircraft, so it all does work. Oh gosh, what is going on here? Well, you know what? There are no methods names. Oh, I've run into this before. Hold on, let me think about this. Yeah, I've run into this before, and it's something really bizarre. Hold on, let me pull up one of the a recent working example here. So, so here's an aircraft function. Same thing here, same thing here, same thing, same thing. So, you know, I wonder, I think there was something about that now that you mentioned that. Hold on, I don't want to spend too much time on this and get down in the weeds, but I really have to know. So, yeah, I did not give it the, there we go. Let me see, save. There we go. And while this comes up, I'm going to go back here and look at this. Yeah, there is something really bizarro weird, and that may have been it. Very subtle. If this doesn't fix it, I will charge for it because I don't want to lose the, and it did. It very much is the visibility. So yeah, like I said, I'd run into that before, and it took me like forever to figure out what is going on, and that's simply it. Or we think it is, right? Because the proof's in the pudding. We have to run this just to find out for sure. So we have our aircraft function running. We have our position function running. We have plane finder running. Let's hit plane finder and kick off the party. So http:/8080/aircraft, and this will return hopefully some aircraft that are in the vicinity of St. Louis. That's my home, and that's where I have the device running, and therefore it checks. So if we go here to our plane finder, and you see the plane finder does return from aircraft. It gets the nice little log with the aircraft, and then I also have position, which is just like a graph position. Because again, what's life without whimsy? So that all seems to be working just brilliantly. I go over and look at our functions here for our position function. Everything is working. If I go up and look at the logs here, we see that everything is chugging along nicely. If I go over here and I look at the aircraft function, we see that it's also working nicely. So that's success, right? Now, I do want to, because I'm running this with Azure Functions and I'm running it locally. So this is kind of my second step. Once I get the Spring Cloud Functions working the way I want them to work locally, then I apply Azure Functions and run it locally and make sure everything works properly. And then what I do is I try to deploy them to the cloud and run them and access them from the cloud to make sure that everything is working properly. So I'm going to go ahead and stop these, the local functions, Azure Functions. And then I'm going to go over to Plane Finder and stop that, because what I want to do is just add a couple of, I've created this where it's configurable, where I can point to cloud endpoints as well. So I'm just going to do a source dev, let's see, set Azure Functions, I believe. Oops, let's see, .shell. There we go. So now if there we go. So if I do an end grep URL, then we see that we have aircraft URL and position URL, and they're pointing to Azure websites, right? AzureWebsites.net, Spring Cloud Function. So we should be able to connect and use those. So let me go ahead and restart. Nope. There we go. We'll go ahead and restart Plane Finder, and we should be able to push the same aircraft and position information to Azure functions running in the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that endpoint once again, and we'll see what happens. Everything is pulling back, it's sending it out, and it's getting the responses from the aircraft function and the position function. So, okay, so we have that all working. That's kind of the crux, or the bulk, the center portion, the meaty portion of the session. However, I mentioned earlier that we're seeing a lot of lines that are being blurred, right? So I've talked about functions. However, you have options, because as developers, what we often do is look for different ways we can do the same thing. More efficient ways, more effective ways, more cost-effective ways. In today's current climate, economic climate, we're always looking for a better way to do things at better cost, right? Because otherwise, we're the scapegoat. So there's always this push to find a different way, a better way of doing things. And I'm going to show you an alternative way. I won't say it's better. In certain cases it may be, in certain cases it won't be, but it's also something I feel like that is worth considering. So I'm going to, well, I've already stopped everything other than the Plane Finder, so I'll go from there. So let's go back to our project here. Now, I'm going to back out a lot of the things that I just did, because this is kind of an interesting, I think, way to go about it. So I'm going to go ahead and restore this dependency. I'm going to go ahead and remove the Azure function adapter, right? And of course, that means I can actually just comment about a lot of this stuff out. And I wouldn't have to do this, but I'm going to do it just to show you there's literally nothing else that's in play here other than what we started with, which is our Spring Cloud function. So I'm going to remove that, comment that, and I'm doing that just because that way if we need to go back and do anything, we can. So let's go ahead and comment out our other plugin. Make sure that I didn't miss on my my matches here. I'll go ahead and do that. And application properties, I'm going to go ahead and comment this. It doesn't really matter, but it saves me a step down the road. Don't care about the host.json and the local settings.json anymore, but they're not going to hurt anything, so I'm just going to leave them there. I'm going to go ahead and comment out all of the function component because we don't need it, right? So what are we back to? We're back to our Spring Cloud function, right? Very nice, very clean. So what I'm going to do at this point, we have our two endpoints. We'll just leave those in place. What I want to do now is do something a little differently. And now for something completely different. So let me go over to this window. And that's our position function. There's our function, aircraft function. So I'm going to change my Java version to, let me see, Java. And I have installed, there it is. So I've got the Liberica native image, K, I don't remember, kit, compiler, everything's with a K now, but that's fine. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to quit SDK use Java, and I'm going to switch this over. So now I've got the version for the Liberica GraalVM build kit, right? And at this point, what I want to do is take that very same project and do a Maven W Spring boot build image. And what I'm doing with this is I'm building a GraalVM native executable, native binary, and I'm going to use Cloud Native build packs to package that up into an OCI container image, right? So this does this pretty reasonably quickly, depending on how many things you already have done ahead of time. But this should go a couple, 3 minutes maybe, and we do have the time, so that's a good thing. Oh, okay. Let's see. So here we go again. Failed to build, exit status 1. Oh, I do. That is one other thing that I need to do, though, which is go to the POM. What I like to do with this, and it's certainly not required, but I like to bring in the configuration and then the image name, I believe. Is it project? I think it's project version that I do, or project artifact ID, and colon, and then the $project version. That should work. If not, I'll always think it should have. All right. It's kind of interesting about that, though. Failing that, I already actually do have one that's built and deployed, so worst case, I can go with that. Oh, successfully built Azure Functions. That's not what I was expecting. Yeah, something is not happy here, so let me see. Yeah, it's not happy about that either, so I can't really do that. Function component, I have everything closed out. I've got this. Everything is good there. If anybody sees anything that I'm missing, yes, I do, intentionally. I can actually just delete that, that's fine. I always hate to do that in case somebody comes up and asks a question afterward, but what the heck? Live dangerously. I'll delete the Azure directory. So now, okay, well, let's, I'm going to get rid of this cruft in case something is masking just that I'm not seeing here. Thin layout. Don't need. We've got our image name, which again is an optional thing, but it's nice to have. Got the Spring Cloud Function adapter Azure there. Starter function. What's that? Yeah, I am though. This is gone. All right. Well, let's see here. So, Spring Boot build image. Let me just do a clean package just to make sure everything is clean package, which should be superfluous. Yes. Spring Boot build image. Okay, if this does not work, we'll just cut to the chase because I do want to make sure that I can show you a couple of numbers, and we are really close on time. In fact, we're just sliding over the edge here. There's probably something simple that I'm just skipping, a very simple, easy step, and if so, I will post it on Twitter. So if you're not following me, follow me just for that, and it is just dying on me here. So, DN, interesting. Okay. So I actually do have a backup plan. Never hurts to have a backup plan. Let's see. So that's not there. Let's see here. So what I want to do is go over to Plane Finder and stop this. And nope. All right, well, I'm going to have to just pull this up and find my crib note on which endpoint I had there. I have all kinds of notes made on this, and most of the time I just never need to care. It's already deployed ACA instance. Here we go. So let's grab that, and we will, let's see, we'll do this. So env grab URL, and I want to point to, let me just export this, export aircraft URL equals that, and we'll point to an Azure Container Applications application. It's just the function deployed as an application. And then we'll go ahead and rerun our plane finder here. So all right. Well, that was not exactly what I anticipated, but it never is. Okay, so let's run this. Everything is working, we think. Let's find out. There are our positions. And I haven't pre-warmed this. Of course, the first time you hit it, it's already been scaled to 0. And that's where I was kind of going with some of this, is that you have options when it comes to functions, and you have options when it comes to Azure Container Applications. And you can scale the container applications down to 0, which gives you almost a function-like operation mode. So we're running there. I'm going to go ahead and hit it again. And of course, let's warm back up. And you can configure the warm-up. So how long it keeps it active and how long it, when it will bring it down and to save time and all this. Now what I want to do, because what I was hoping to show you, is building and deploying a native executable, a native binary in Java to a container, and then using container apps to do that. And you're probably wondering, comparing that native binary running in a container to a function which is not built using native Java. It's just built using the JDK. You deploy it, Azure Functions will run it. So what's the comparison? Is there a fair comparison there? So what I like to do is just hit both endpoints. So time, and why is that not, wait, it's just, yeah, that's good. That's a little bit larger anyway. So time, and I'm going to hit the, oh, that's what I should have done to begin with. So I'm timing accessing the Azure Container app, and we see that we're getting 0.25 seconds, so a quarter of a second round trip. So if I also do a time, come on, there we go, time, and we will go to our function. That's the wrong function. That's 0.23 seconds. And you can run these multiple times, and they'll improve or degrade just a slight amount, like maybe 100th or 200ths of a second. But ultimately, what you're seeing is that they're very much performant, similarly performant. So whether you think, hey, let me compile this using Graal, and I'll deploy this using a native image, and everything will be that much faster, I don't find that to be the case, which then brings us back to what makes sense to do. Because there you start comparing the two, and when you're talking about Azure Functions, you have the flexibility to use various different triggers to execute them. You have different billing, and I've looked at the billing, and it basically just depends on your use case, because it's gigabits per second on executions, and you get so many free executions for functions. You also get a certain number of free executions for Azure Container apps, but it's a different metric, right? So it's per request. So all of that is to say this. You have to have a proof of concept. You have to try to run both if you have something that could feasibly fall into either camp. And then you have to kind of evaluate those results to see what makes sense for your particular situation, that situation at that point in time. So you do have great options, but it's up to you to decide which ones you want to employ for that particular use case. So let me go back and we'll wrap up with the slides. Come on, there we go. Okay, good. Let's see, so that is that. Okay, good, because I can't tell for sure what's up there. So if you want to know more, please check out the repo. This is a meta repo, and this points to the function repos. Each of the function repos actually has two branches. One is just Spring Cloud Function. One is Spring Cloud Function with Azure Functions. I will be adding Azure Container Applications branch as well. So watch the repo, because I'll be adding that. And then if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, because we are out of time, find me out here, Or if you think of it and you don't see me, or if you think of it when you go back to the hotel at night or whatever, reach out to me on Twitter, on email. If you want to know more about the book, it has a Twitter account too. Check it out. Thanks for coming and enjoy Devnexus.